Mentoring African youth towards the Africa we want. An old and very valuable African tradition we unintentionally lost, which we are currently heavily paying the price for, is youth mentorship. See, in the African traditional customs, the family, which normally went beyond the parents and children, also included uncles and aunties who would gather outside and sit around a fire to share stories. The women would normally sit around the fire in the kitchen with their grandmothers, while the elders sat outside mentoring the young men. The African three-legged stool is where, as young African women, we were taught how to sit properly with our legs closed together. My maternal grandmother used to tell me that the fire would put ugly marks, which she called Mbala, on my inner thigh. Truth be told, the only marks I ever got were her painful pinches whenever I forgot to sit properly with my legs put together. To date, I'm very careful how I sit. The entertainment, mainly through television and social media with all its benefits, has replaced mentorship in many homes. Mentorship has completely been removed from our homes, especially today for the young person who is not really involved in church programs, youth clubs, or professional clubs. Today, many young people are clueless on many life skills that used to be passed on around the fire in many African homes. In this series of African youth in agribusiness, I hope to share my stories to inspire young people as an African mother, a wife, a trader, especially as a woman in technology, to cause Africa to think differently, especially in Africa's agricultural markets and trade. Hi, my name is Faustina Mani. I'm the Global Trade Engagement Director at Better Grains, www.bettergrains.com, and I'm a founder of a private marketplace called Mothers of Africa Mobile Socom, which can be found on www.mothersofafricamobilesocom.com. I'm a recognized sector leader in Africa's agriculture and a credible, reputable, and much sought after global trade engagement facilitator by many development partners, non-profit organizations, and foreign government commercial attaches seeking partnerships and distribution opportunities for trade in Africa's mass market, especially the bottom of the pyramid. As a woman of Christian faith, I'm serving God by championing for an agricultural markets revolution that favors Africa as my contribution towards Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. I'm using my social media platforms, #Legacy2063 by Faustina Mani, to serve farmers, traders, women in agribusiness, and youthful. And when I talk about youthful, I mean the young, the mature, and yes, the retired professionals, to create the Africa that we want. My heart breaks every time I see African youth idling, wasting time because they simply do not know what to do with themselves. Yes, unemployment may be on the high, and even those who are able to find jobs, the salary is not all that. There are those who know they do not want to work for anybody, but the question is, what business do they start? What pains me the most is Africa's rural youth who have so much land within their reach, yet cannot think of any projects they can come up with. Land is God's best gift to Africa today, yet Africa has youth who cannot wait to get out of rural areas into the urban cities. So, where does a young person begin? Well, you go back to your Maker, God Almighty. Jeremiah 1:5 states, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations." This is one verse that helped shape my life at 21 years. I was headed to a foreign land. I did not know what the future held for me, but that Bible verse is what I held on to. That is how I started journaling, which is simply writing down my conversations with God. How do you speak to God? The same way you speak to another person. How do you hear God? Well, God created you. It's up to Him to figure out how to talk to you. And trust me, when He does, you will know. Long before I was the ovary the sperm collided with, God knew me. That means God knew me and decided exactly where I was going to be born. The second thing God did for me is that He sanctified me. Sanctified means separated for a specific assignment. So, what I do is very specific to my assignment. I am very original. That is why God gave me a unique DNA and a unique fingerprint. Everything about me is wired for that specific assignment. Then God ordained. Ordained means appoint. He appointed me as a prophet. A prophet is an ambassador or a spokesperson to the nations. That is why my assignment cannot be confined to Kenya alone. It is to the nations, and the more I speak to God, the more I realize it is specifically to the African continent. My conversations with God is how I have found what I am supposed to do. My conversations with God is how I find my clarity. My conversations with God is where I find my creativity and the innovations for the work that I do. I began writing down my conversations with God way back in 1987. I was headed to the United States. I was not certain what the future held. In my 6-hour layover in Amsterdam, Netherlands, I walked over to a shop and bought a notebook and began writing my letters to God. 37 years later, I am still writing my letters to God. Why did I decide to write? Well, something strange happened to me. As I was boarding the plane to Amsterdam with one foot on the plane and the other still on the ramp, I remember promising myself that I would one day come back to Kenya. I did not know what the future held, but I knew I would come back to Africa. And that became a major factor in every decision I made, including the selection of a spouse. I knew that promise was not just a thought, but a divine download that would change my life forever. That is why I started journaling. I wrote my thoughts down, and I still do. Another thought later that came was that one day I would set up a business school in Machakos, Kenya. See, journaling has worked for me because I'm able to track the promises that come true. Because I have learned that I have to grow to a certain level to be able to walk into that which God has promised me. See, transformation is a process which is necessary to achieve and to deliver on your assignment. It sounds very simple, but one of the most difficult things to do is to quiet your mind and speak to God. That is hard. Enoch's relationship with God is one I really admire. See, Enoch and God were like that buddy of yours you enjoy spending such intimate conversations with. You know, the one you escort to their house, then the conversation is so sweet, you decide your friend should escort you back to your house, and before you know it, you have spent so much time in sweet conversations between both houses. Then you decide one of you should probably just do a sleepover. Well, God decided Enoch should do a sleepover at God's place, and that is how Enoch never died. I have always wanted that sort of relationship with God. That is why my conversations with God have always been effortless and lacking in format. See, I figured out a long time ago that God knows everything about me, so I'm simply honest and I'm very sincere when sad, when depressed, when sinful, when bitter, when angry, or when just plain mean. I simply tell Him. I simply let God know and ask the Holy Spirit to help me walk aright. I am very human, but I'm also very honest with God. If you are a young person or even an adult, if you are not journaling, you need to start. Imagine if Moses had never journaled, would we have the Old Testament in the Bible? Imagine if David had never journaled, would we have the Psalms in the Bible? One of the things I admire most about the nation of Israel is they know where they came from. The begotten we like to skip over in the Bible is one thing I wish Africa had. African communities used to teach their begottens to their children through songs, which many of us have stopped. If you have older relatives, please take the time to speak to them and let them narrate your individual begottens so that you can write them down and pass it on to your future generation. It is important that we know who we came from, the father of the father of the father of the father of the son of the son of the son of the son. This is so important, and Africa needs to record much of its history as it possibly can. If you are an African youth and you have some idea on what you want to do, you need to find mentors. There are mentors all around you. The only problem is with today's lifestyle, our focus is strictly on our nuclear family. We have lost the richness of learning from our elders. Your approach to your mentor should be that of an African child, where you sit at their feet and learn. You may not necessarily agree with everything they say, but keep quiet and learn. And when you are alone, think about it. Also let it be part of your conversations with God. What most people do not know about me is that the prospects of me studying in the United States was never on my parents' agenda. It was never me, but another sister. My father's brother, the late Professor Samson Munyoki, had just moved back to Kenya from the United States and was staying with us. I just loved hanging around him. He was so fascinating to me. He was tall and extremely unapologetic about his big afro and expensive chain, or like calling them bling. As any African daughter, I loved serving him food and just sitting down and listening and learning from him. So whenever Uncle Sam needed to go somewhere, he tagged me along. On one such visit with Uncle Sam to a young couple who were his friends, the lady mentioned that she had started a Christian organization and was offering exchange programs for African youth. When she saw me, she asked if I was interested, and that is how I ended up on an international Christian exchange program. It was a 1-year volunteer program with a very small stipend, working at the World Affairs Council in Seattle, Washington. I finished my exchange program and moved to another state, and I started my bachelor's program. Today's African youth are surrounded with such amazing opportunity. If only they would take their time to seek out and sit down and learn. Do you have an auntie or an uncle who is doing amazing stuff, or one whom you really admire, like I did with my Uncle Sam? Seek him out. Offer to buy them coffee. Do not always be on the receiving end. Ask to do something for him, for him or her. And when given a chance, don't just ask for money. Ask for an opportunity to learn from their experiences. I get a lot of requests for jobs and advice on careers, and normally the first thing I ask is to look at their CV. When I make recommendations on what to change or advise that they hire someone to help them with their CV, if they lack the expertise, many people get very offended, especially the young people, and insist their CV is just fine. Well, clearly it is not, because it's not working for you. A relative once got very offended and refused to speak to me again because of my recommendations that they work on their CV. But after the dust had settled, they came back and I was able to quickly point to them what was wrong. He apologized, and when I showed him what he needed to do, the outcome was not just a job, because I did not have one, but I was able to show him how to use his skills to market himself, which he has continued to do so and has done very well for himself. African youth, learn to seek out your elders and sit at their feet and quietly learn. In doing so, there you will find amazing wisdom for business opportunities, networks, jobs, referrals, and other wonderful things. God does not drop prayers from heaven onto your lap. God uses men to answer your prayers. Like many Africans, we tend to judge a person by the way they look, dress, or what they drive. No, don't do that. Be respectful, learn, and listen. You have no idea who is delivering your opportunity. T.D. Jakes says, an opportunity will often come dressed in a coat of opposition, never in a three-piece suit with opportunity written all over it. More often than not, opportunity comes as a problem and can be highly, highly offensive. Prayerfully seek wisdom from God, including reaching out to your elders. Listen, learn, and ask God to reveal who is carrying the answer to your prayer. African youth, my hope is to simply inspire you out of hopelessness that I have seen in many African youth. Reach out and let's join hands so that we can create the Africa that we want as our Agenda 2063. Thank you for listening to me. Please subscribe and God bless you.